Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We just got done listening to some Black MIDI for Short Songs Week, and we're going to be moving on to. We're going to be moving on to a special selection, which seems to be uh, expertly placed somehow with the luck of the cosmos into this week's short song theme. Heath Halverson wants me to check out We Lost the Sea, Challenger Part 1, Flight. And this is a 24-minute song. It's 15 seconds short of 24 minutes. This is not a short song by any means. Just the irony. We haven't had a song that's gone past the 20-minute mark in quite some time for special selections. At least it doesn't feel like we've done one in a while, and we just happen to have it during Short Songs Week. So if you need a bit of, a bit of a song that has more meat on the bones, having checked out so many sub 3-minute songs this week, we got one for you. You don't have to wait until Monday to get back into some meatier songs. So let's get into this. This is We Lost the Sea, Challenger, Part 1, Flight.
I've found that sometimes I'm able to control a dream, or sometimes I'm able to direct myself before going to sleep to dream about a certain subject, and sometimes not. The important thing was to see your hands in a dream, and I made an effort to do this a number of times. And only a couple of times did I succeed in actually seeing my hands in a dream. And to me, one of the most important new facts about dreams is that they are a biologic necessity. They have made experiments of waking people up whenever they start to dream. They can tell by the rapid eye movements and also by the brain waves. The brain waves of dreams are very much like the brain waves of people when they're awake. And if they keep interfering with the REM sleep as the dream sleep, very soon the subject will show all the symptoms of sleeplessness, no matter how much dreamless sleep they allow. And eventually it will be fatal. It's within 2 weeks or so. So we know now that dreams are a biologic necessity, which means that they must serve a very important function. The next step is to go into space to leave the planet. We're not there yet.
Yeah, so a heavily textured atmosphere so far. Looks like some sound clips.
Here we have an artifact weighing about 170 pounds that cannot exist outside of a very specialized environment. It's sort of a whole aquarium. The official space programs, how do they propose to solve this? Well, they're going to move this whole artifact, the human artifact, in its environment. from one place to another. It wouldn't occur to them to start from the other end.
It is interesting how the sound clips give this more of a soundtrack feeling.
You have an object, X, that's the human body, and you want to transport X, say, from Earth to space from E to S. And X is heavy, and it can only live in a whole medium. So why not alter X to reduce its weight and its dependency on its medium? That would seem to be a logical approach to the problem. This would not occur to the official
The slow metamorphosis of these chords and the overall melodic movements
in effect,
is fascinating.
Limitations imposed by Christianity, by what Crowley calls the slave gods.
There's so many overtones and undertones to the distorted sounds that get lost in a lot of the faster music that we tend to hear these types of guitar tones in, and just letting them really sit and be and hearing all of that and the way that these sounds move is fascinating.
That is less dense, in fact almost weightless, and that would be the astral or dream body. So the function of dreams may be to prepare us for space, and that is why they are a biological necessity.
It's an interesting conclusion to come to.
We're not there yet, not there yet, not there yet, not there yet.
Alright, so far the intro was incredibly dense, atmospheric soundscapes. We've still got about 20 minutes left, a little under 20 minutes. Let's see where this takes us. Let's see where this journey goes. Almost feels like we're in free time because those chords are not coming in any consistent pattern, it feels like. Alright, so we're not in free time at least anymore, but it is a very slow tempo. Alright, so we're in 4/4, very slow though. Alright, so we're about 62. So about 1 beat per second. That's... yeah, that's a pretty slow tempo. We're really taking our time building here. We have the distorted guitar in the background slowly coming in. It even at the, I don't know, even like 8-10 repetitions ago, you could hear it coming in. So yeah, we got these dotted notes coming in here on the left speaker, providing a bit of a, almost like a triplet feel on top of the eighth notes that the distorted guitar is doing, and then these whole notes in the acoustic guitar, providing a bit of rhythmic complexity, layering rhythmic ideas. Even in the drum, we have the eighth notes coming in on the cross stick, but the bass is emphasizing that triplet feel that the left guitar is. We got some dissonance coming in on the right side. Not hard dissonance, just it's the slightest amount. Interesting transition though. I figured with the slow burn we were going in, we were going to see something that expanded upon it, and instead we kind of went the opposite direction. Heavy reverb. Yeah, really cool counterpoint between the center panned guitar and the right panned guitar. It's a dreary optimism to the whole song. I think it comes from sort of the opposing forces of the lethargy in the meter itself and some of the more positive aspects of the melodic work. But it definitely sounds like the song is at ends with itself. At odds with itself. that crackling texture in this lead guitar. And like I said, I think it's just one of those ideas of creating these sonic identities with the overdrive and the distortion, whatever, pedals and all that, and just really letting these tones exist for long periods of time and getting those overtones and undertones and textures, giving time for them to develop and change and alter over the length of these notes. Interesting that we're adding a new voice so late in the song. And did we just double it up? It's wider and louder than it was in the Oh, we're modulating it. I got it. So now we've entered into a bit of a 3 feel, but we'll see what the meter actually is once the drums kick in. Actually, that might still be 4 in that 60 tempo. Alright, so it might be a faster 3/4, but if we're still in the 4/4 with a triplet feel, we're at about 68. So still a bit slower. Yeah, we're in 4 still. Yeah, we got some polymeter going on too, like the hi-hats are playing 6 notes in the span of one beat, so it gives it a 3 feel or a 6 feel. And we get this nice 3 against 4 idea going on here. And this has more of the drive that I would associate with this optimism. this was well worth it. I'm not a big fan of these slow burns, but yeah, this is a good payoff. We're really moving to that splash crash cymbal. I always get them confused. Really has a brighter energy to it, and it reverberates more, giving it more energy and drive forward than with the hi-hat we saw earlier, and a lot of the smaller, more muted cymbals we saw in the previous sections. Continuing to find layers to add on top of this. Yeah, so we're introducing chaotic elements with that screeching sound and this gradually increasing tempo. So, uh, I kind of had an idea that so the cover art is, let me pull this back up momentarily so I can show you. It's a rocket going off in a distance. The song is called Challenger Part 1 Flight. Challenger was a, I don't know if it's technically a space shuttle. I don't know if there's any, classification, specifications, stuff like that. But as the ending of the song alluded to, it exploded. And I don't know many of the details about the incident, but yeah, it was not a successful launch. And being that the song was called Challenger and we had this picture of a rocket ship, I kind of had this idea in the back of my mind. Um, and it alluded me to this idea of, the rocket ship. The band's called We Lost the Sea, and I think that kind of ties into this idea of leaving the Earth because the sea is like 70% of the Earth or something like that. It's a vast percentage of our planet, and if we lose that to whatever forces may be, then it's pretty much time to find a new planet, which would drive space exploration. So it all kind of ties into this idea of getting to space, and then of course we had the sound bites at the beginning about space flight. So I interpreted the song as space flight oriented, not necessarily going through space, but getting into space. And I think that fits with a lot of the ideas of sort of, uh, what did I call it? Lethargic victory or something like that. There's a lot of, optimism, lethargic optimism, uh, which actually I could probably reinterpret into hesitant optimism, sort of that anxiety you get when you're about to do something amazing, no matter how small that is. Maybe it's the first time you release a work of art, something you're passionate about to the internet, to the masses, and somebody hears it or sees it other than you, or it could be something as monumental as leaving the planet. Uh, but that first time, the anxiety of that is both positive and negative. You're moving into the unknown. There's a space on the other side of this action, whether it is the rocket launching or you pushing publish, that can change everything. And there's going to be some good stuff that comes from that, and there might be some bad stuff. And that anxiety, that hesitant optimism shines through in the first half of this song. I also like the third section, which brings everything down. I think it's just a keyboard or the organ, I think, and the two guitars from the previous section, the acoustic and the electric. But the two guitars have slowly faded out, and now we have this organ coming in to bring in that final driving section of the song. But before we get there, we have this very quiet idea. And that reminds me of what probably would be the countdown session, waiting for the rocket to lift off and possibly holding your breath or something like that. And then we have liftoff, and it is exciting, it is monumentous, and we have all of this. Like I said, that's when we actually had the driving optimism. It almost sounded victorious there in that final moment, but we began introducing chaotic elements. We had the tempo increase. We had the screeching guitar tone that I don't even know how they created that. Um, and we had all these elements of lost control in a sense. And like I said, I had this idea of the Challenger in mind, but it didn't put me in the mind of the Challenger event. It put me in the mind of space flight, of being in a spaceship, a space shuttle, and launching off of Earth, off of the ground, into the sky and into space. And the ending really, really hit hard, especially because I was already in the proper mindset. I just didn't expect that that's where they were going with the musical story. And I was even kind of hesitant to lean into that. The faster tempo and the screeching could have just as well been, the fear of, leaving the atmosphere and all of the, I'm sure turbulence or whatever is going to happen as you leave the atmosphere. I'm sure it's not it's not the smoothest ride. Um, so I kind of attributed it to that, and then I figured it would all calm back down, and that would be the story, of having left and begun to orbit the planet, and sort of, the song moving into a sort of wondrous awe would be how the song finished, and yeah, that's not what happened. I'm fairly certain with the sound clips that they have that they created a song about the Challenger incident, and it recontextualizes everything about the track, to me at least, because there's definitely going to be concerns and anxiety about any rocket launch, yes. For the people on the ground, for the people in the rocket itself, there's going to be tension for all of them, right? Especially with the moments leading up to it. But it takes on a different form when you realize that songs were written for a tragedy in this idea of a rocket launch. And going back and thinking about some of those sections and the emotions that they were conveying with the impossible knowledge of knowing what's going to happen, knowing what the future holds, it gives everything an edge of sadness, an edge of tragedy to it that I did not get on my first listen. And maybe those sound clips do come from somebody just prior to the Challenger launch, or maybe they're not related at all. Maybe if I had known where they come from, the source material of the sound clips, I would have been better prepared for what the song had to offer. And I don't think that final section, I would have been bobbing around as much because I really felt victorious in it. And I think that's an interesting concept because of what it means for a first time listen for someone who doesn't have the context, and for a second or third or subsequent listen where the context is understood, because it basically plays the role of seer in a sense, where if you know what happens, it changes the emotion of the event. I'm sure that the people in the cockpit were quite victorious at that moment when they were flying off the ground and making progress. Um, there was probably some victory in that, some, excitement, general excitement. You're going to leave the planet, you're going to get to see Earth from the outside in. There's probably still some tension. You haven't made it yet, you're still in that journey. But, so far, it's working. And I was in that elation with them. Then the chaotic elements start happening, and the song starts to become a bit more worried. And then we get the aftermath with the people on the ground and what they were saying when the rocket exploded. And I don't think listening to this song again, ever, I will hit those same levels of elation. To me, that will be a section of fear. I know what's coming. I know what's about to happen. I cannot be excited during that section ever again. This first time listen is something I will not be able to have with this song. And it's interesting that I have changed from being somebody in the cockpit with them to now being an outside observer, not just outside of the rocket, but outside of time. I'm looking at this knowing what the end result is, and it completely changes the meaning of the song, the meaning of the sections, the atmosphere, and the emotions I feel while listening to it. And I'm trying to think of another song that might. Yeah, I can't think of another song that I have heard that is like this. Obviously, it helps to have a story. Not a lot of songs have stories, especially tragedies. We do have conceptual albums that tell stories, but I don't think I've listened to too many that have negative stories, sad stories. Other than maybe like a soundtrack to a musical that was a tragedy. But even then, I kind of knew what I was in store for before I listened or before I watched the musical, before I listened to the soundtrack or whatever. I kind of knew I was in store for a tragedy. But this is, like I said, this has got to be the only time that I kind of had very positive vibes throughout a rather negative song, and it's only because I lacked the context. I can never return to that state of not knowing what the song is about, and now I will feel the intended emotions. And that's just, I don't know, that intrigues me. That interests me. It's like watching a thriller or a puzzle movie for the first time, and just constantly being on the edge of your seat, not knowing what's going to happen next, trying to figure out, who done it, so to speak. But after you've watched it, you can never have that first watch again. It's completely gone. It's lost to time. All right, so let's move on. Let's dig into some of the musical ideas here. The song exists in four sections. We have the intro, maybe five sections. I don't know. Let's work through this verbally. We have the intro section, which sets up a very ominous soundscape, a densely textured soundscape behind sound bites about dreaming and space exploration. I'm not sure if they were taken out of context, if the words were mixed and matched, or if it's exactly as it was said when it was live. But it has nothing to do with the music, but it intrigues me that the person came to the conclusion that dreams are necessary because without them, we show signs of sleep deprivation, which it's an interesting conclusion to draw. Maybe it was just at the time. REM sleep does give us the most rested part of sleep, and you do dream during REM sleep. I don't know if I would make that connection yet. I don't know if scientists are still making that connection that dreams are important rather than the sleep idea. Dreams happen to come during REM. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Anyways, he says that he thinks dreams are important to space exploration. And that was just really interesting. It was a very interesting conclusion to draw. Anyways, back to the music. We have that intro soundscape, very ominous, especially now knowing what the song is about. Uh, but what I really want to focus on here is the long, drawn out sounds. I talked about this a little bit while we were going through the reaction. I want to bring it up again though. When we modulate and modify a sound the way we do with electric guitars, we run them through amps and cabinets and effect pedals, and we apply overdrive and distortion to them. We push them way past clipping, and we get all of these gnarly textures in them, so that we get that nice crunch when we hit that power chord or whatever. You're chugging along and you get that really nice bite to those quick hits, those quick strums. It's really effective at providing some aggression to short notes. But when we let the note ring out, and I would say they might have even stretched them a little bit or modulated on top of the playing, because some of these notes went way past the frame that I think most strings would continue to vibrate upon. Um, So it would not surprise me if they played faster guitar things. Maybe they just, strummed a chord and let it ring out as long as it would, and then they stretched that sound even further for some of these notes. But really getting to listen in on how the textures change and warp and go through metamorphosis while they're being played. We get these interesting overtones, undertones. It sounds like specific elements of the note itself, maybe some of the higher tones or mid tones or low tones. It feels like they're moving. There's a bit of like a panning warble to them. It is fascinating to listen to these soundscapes being created, and it becomes overwhelming at a point near the end of this section with so much texture. Like I said, it's a densely textured section. It becomes overwhelming. Just all of these sounds that are not entirely intentional. We just run these through pedals and amps and stuff to get that bite, that raw aggression, the kick, the grittiness that we want for these notes, but we don't ever really hold them out like this or even stretch them out to really allow them to breathe and showcase the individual textures. It to me, it's like looking at a painting, right? Oil painting, I think, is does this very well. You look at it from afar, you can see the picture. You get up close though, and you can see the brush strokes. You can see where the oil is layered in different thickness. You can see where some of the oil gets clumped up in some spaces and where it's thinner and others. And you really get to see the nitty-gritty aspects of the artwork, and you get into the mind of the artist, why they did brush strokes this way, why they changed brush strokes, why they changed brushes, why they allowed the oil to clump up here but not over here. There's a lot of imperfections in art when you start looking at it under a microscope, metaphorically. But when you get really close to a painting, you can start to see imperfections might be the wrong word. Inconsistencies might be another. There's definitely a lot of conscious choices made. Like I said, with brush strokes, individual brushes, different types of application, but there's also unintended ones. Like I said, with oil clumping and stuff like that. Uh, and it's really interesting to me to see these physical textures and how up close you can see so many varying aspects, but when you back away, you can see the full picture. And in a sense, I mean, you can also apply this to stuff like pointillism, which is art created with lots of tiny shapes. Dots are often used. When you get real close, you just see a grid of dots. But when you back up, your eyes form the picture and you can see how it comes together. And this idea of texture and letting these ideas breathe while also looking at them very intently. It's fascinating to see how much color and personality are in these guitar strums. You know, they're playing a chord, maybe a dyad, but there's so much going on because of all the modulation to the tone that we typically just don't get to hear because it goes by too fast. And I absolutely love that they did this. It is so cool, and it makes me want to explore this more. Maybe not necessarily on my own because I lack a lot of electric guitar equipment to find these cool things. I could always do it digitally in a DAW, but I feel like it's never as good. It emulates what's being done with hardware. And as with emulation, you're kind of getting a facsimile of the idea rather than the idea itself. But it kind of makes me want to explore maybe other bands who do this, or even just like YouTube channels. Hey, I ran my guitar through, this right here, and then I stretched it out by 50% so we can really hear what's going on. Here's a B chord, here's an E minor chord, and then just like sitting in these textured soundscapes. Um, I don't know. I don't know if anybody else is as as excited about that as I am. Kind of a weirdo, I suppose. Maybe I'm in good company though. But yeah, that opening really opened my mind to this idea of creating soundscape with unintended textures, just throwing things together and then stretching it out and see what happens. And that's still me assuming it's been stretched out. I do think that's how it is. That way we can slow down some of some of the movement and textural elements to it so we can actually hear it. It's not even just that the strings stop ringing too fast, it is that these tones don't evolve as slowly as I would like to be able to really hear what's going on in them. So after that section, we move on to the second section, which kind of brings everything down a little bit and makes it a little bit more intimate. This is the part where we had the right guitar and the center guitar doing some sort of counterpoint, and we really sat in this idea for a long time. I would say there was not a lot of slow burn layering to it. We just kind of created the sound. We had the two guitars, maybe a third guitar on the left, maybe a piano, and then the drums, and just sat in here for 5 or 7 minutes at least. There really wasn't a lot of additional voices or rhythmic ideas or any sort of changes to this song. It was sort of just a slow burn with the transition into the sparse quiet section. And like I said, this would to me kind of be the countdown where everybody starts to hold their breath, and you were preparing for this launch, you were getting ready for it, but now it's close, right? It's not something you can kind of put out of mind. Everybody's ready, they're at the controls. Your people in the rockets are in their seats, they're buckled in, everybody's ready to get going. And now you're just kind of waiting out the 15-minute countdown or whatever. It's got to be nerve-wracking, just the raw silence of everybody just waiting, waiting for liftoff. And then we move from there to the final section, the liftoff, the energy, the celebration in a sense, what I felt, but also just this raw drive and momentum pushing towards, what should be the escape from Earth. And I really love how they took this section, they really let it go, let it be. The drums open up. We move from a lot of the hi hat and smaller, quieter uh, cymbals to the splash, crash. I don't know. One of these days, I really got to go and figure out the difference between those two. But it's bright, it's got a lot of shimmer and reverb on it, and it just opens up the entire song. The drum starts to open up with the rhythmic stuff, increases the momentum and direction, and for the first time in the entire song. It feels like we're progressing somewhere. We're not sitting still waiting. And I mentioned I'm not a big fan of these slow burns. 24-minute song with four sections that really aren't doing much. It's it's a big amount of time for me to just sort of be sitting around and waiting. And I understand there's a difference between the critical and the casual listen. When you're casually listening, you can fall into these elements. You can sort of meditate, close or turn your mind off, however you want to go about, being within and feeling these sections. Um, and I'm sure if I listened to this on my own, I would probably do that. But as doing a critical analysis here, doing these reactions, I tend to actively look for things to comment on, for elements that I can work into sort of hypotheses about what's going on, or how to bring it all together and tie it up into a nice, thematic idea that I can talk about when the analysis comes on. I don't really have the affordance of just checking out and feeling a song, which is a bit unfortunate for stuff like post rock. And slow burns like this, where I'm sort of listening to them in an antithetical way to why they were created. But it is what it is. With that said, though, like I said, the song is not really built for me to listen to in this manner. But the ending is one of those rare endings where I feel like even listening to it critically, it still had strong payoff. I loved that ending, and it would not have hit the same way without the 18 minutes build up to it. It really is. I've talked about this before. Contrast. If you want an idea to have greater impact, contrast it with the opposite. And I'll tell you, 15 minutes of sitting still, no direction, no momentum, and silence, even in some sections, very muted elements in the two sections prior to this. Yeah, 100% made that section bigger, more impactful, and just a an elation, not an exaggeration of the emotions that they intended the listener to feel. It is beautifully done. So, yeah, yeah, crazy powerful song all over. And it also shows both a real understanding of their craft in many fashions. We saw sections that showed patience and restraint. We showed sections that showed explosive energy. We had sections that drew marvelous paintings, and created an atmosphere and emotional quality to a real life speech, and allowed it to sort of color that speech in a new light than when people first heard it. Like I said, that first section sounded like a soundtrack to a film, and that soundtrack had specific emotions it was conveying that did not exist when that speech was originally given. So, like I said, it shows a lot of understanding and passion for their craft, and that they can utilize so many different skills and know exactly when to use them and when to eschew them. Phenomenal work. We Lost the Sea. Excellent. Excellent stuff. Very powerful. Who was this? Heath. Great pick. Great pick. Um, and, like I said, I'm not a real big fan of this style of music, but it's works of art like this that really make me appreciate what's going on. I will say, before we finish up here, that the beginning and end are crucial for a first listen. If they had not had the speech sound clips, actually, both of the sets of sound clips, the speech and then the chaotic sound clips of the people on the ground still, the story would not be as understandable on a first listen. It might not even have been understandable without me looking into it and maybe, finding a wiki page or a an interview about the song and hearing their intentions. For them to put it in there, I think it helps this the song itself dictate exactly what it's about without any sort of misunderstanding, which I could see some people being unhappy about. It does kind of handhold the audience. I would say maybe it doesn't respect the audience's I don't know, intentions to look further and find out more about a song. But I think some projects need that. Some projects should be hidden. The meaning of it should be a bit hidden, and the listener should have to dig a little bit to find it. But something like this, I think it's elevated by being very concise about what it is. Right off the start. And then, of course, to put that final footnote at the end, just in case you didn't catch it, this is what it was about. And it still does require a little bit of connections. The word challenger, you have to know where that comes from. The background picture helps a little bit as well. It all comes together to help me paint the picture. I think if any one of the pieces were missing, the sound bites, the song title, or the album art, I might not have pieced it together. So there is a little bit of, I guess, respect for the listener and putting a little bit of weight on their shoulders to do a little bit of homework or to piece things together. It's not laid out entirely easily and given spoon fed directly, but it is very clear, I would say, when you take all the elements together. Those are my thoughts on We Lost the Seas Challenger Part 1 Flight. This is where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this, if you enjoyed it or not, anything that you might want to share or add, maybe anything that I missed or was wrong about. Go ahead and put that stuff down in the comments. Above the comment section, there is a description box, and in there is a link for Linktree. It's a fantastic website. Creates a nice menu with buttons and icons for everything related to the channel. Whether you would like to help support me through Patreon, join me in the Discord community, and talk with the rest of the Critical Reaction community, or to follow me on Twitter. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with the final episode for Short Songs Week, which this song completely demolished. I think this was longer than four four of our episodes worth of music. Easily. Just barely cut. Uh, just barely shorter than all five of them combined. If we took all 10 songs that we looked at this week, I think it would be just a hair longer than this one song. Anyways, I'm stalling just a little bit so that this could be the first video that goes over an hour. We got 40 seconds to go. Anyways, you guys be awesome. Continue to be awesome. Remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to. And have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.